Hey everybody, welcome back to another pickup video, this time for August 2017. Now, before I get into the bulk of everything and start talking about all the games that I got, I want to talk a little bit about where I got them. So pretty much, for the entire last year, basically, I've been saving money so that I could go to Retroworld Expo in Hartford, Connecticut. It's a convention that I go to every year with my buddies Joe and Dustin, and usually somebody else tags along. Once my friend Steve came, once my friend Sean came with us, and this year my friend Chris came along. So, but no matter what, it's always been Joe, Dustin, and me, like, bar none. We're always, like, the three of us always go together. So, pretty much everything that I have today, that's sitting behind me, that I'm going to be showing is from the convention. And I'm just saying that right out the gate so that you guys don't get bored of me going, and I also got this at Retro World Expo. But every purchase does have a story, so I will still have things to talk about, and especially I'll talk about what the games are. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, at the convention I really wanted to start picking up games that I just didn't have in my collection and knew that I needed. So even though I don't have the Nintendo 64 microphone, I finally did get Hey You Pikachu. And I'm really glad that I did, because it's a very cheap game, and it's one that's pretty much a staple of the N64 library. Even if it's a game that no one really truly likes, we all just pretend we like it, myself included. But yeah, for those of you who don't know what Hey You Pikachu is, it's a game that utilizes a microphone that you attach to your N64 controller, and you can actually speak with Pikachu, and the game recognizes certain speech patterns and functions and words, and Pikachu usually doesn't understand anyway. So yeah, Hey You Pikachu, it's pretty cool, and most people know about Hey You Pikachu because there was this whole big shebang when it came out. There were commercials all over TV, and Nintendo even manufactured like 3 or 4 different Pikachu N64 consoles with Pikachu on them, and like his foot is the power button, like the reset button, like a Pokeball for the power button. It's really cool. I don't have any of those. I will eventually, but those are expensive. The game, on the other hand, this is like a $5 game. Even if you don't have the microphone and you're collecting for N64, be like me, finally pick this game up. There's no excuse not to have it. Okay, so moving on. Mega Man X5. This I got at somebody's booth at the convention who was like really forward about my hair. And I get it, my hair is all weird. And I like when people mention that they like my hair. He didn't necessarily say he liked my hair, but he was like, I don't even know how to describe it. He was just constantly talking about my hair. And finally, like, he put his hands like around it to like faux like shape my hair, and I was finally like, dude, you can touch my hair, it's okay. And he suddenly had like a field day going, somebody really wants my attention, going through my hair and telling me all about how soft it was and how beautiful it was. So whatever, but because of that, I think I was able to get a little bit of a rapport with him. My buddy Joe and I bunched our things together at that booth, and this was one of the things that I wanted, and I actually got it for $10 cheaper, pretty much just because this guy really liked to put his hands in my hair. And I can't blame him. I do have some pretty radical hair. Mega Man X5 is the 5th entry in the Mega Man X series, and it was supposed to be the final entry according to Mega Man creator, I should say, Keiji Inafune. But unfortunately, Capcom had other plans. Really wanted to make another Mega Man X game, and he wasn't very happy about that. So we got 3 more, and they all kind of suck. This is like the last good Mega Man X game, and some people argue that even X5 isn't that good. I like it personally, but I think it's the last good one. But it was still necessary for my collection because I didn't have it. I have Mega Man X5 on the Mega Man X collection for GameCube, but unfortunately I never had it on actual PlayStation, so here it is. Alright, keeping with the theme of games that I should have had a long time ago, which is pretty much going to be a staple here with this whole video about all the games that I picked up this October, I finally got Marble Madness for Nintendo Entertainment System. This was originally an arcade game released in 1984 and utilized a trackball. And unfortunately, there's no trackball for the Nintendo, but They make up for it, I guess, with how fluid the controls are using a D-pad in Marble Madness for NES. Can't necessarily say this is a bad game, though, because even though it's a little bit wonky and it really shouldn't be controlled with a D-pad, it's super short, super simple and easy to pick up, and you can breeze through it in like under an hour if you know what you're doing. So honestly, not a bad pickup. Very cheap game, too. I actually saw this game at a lot of booths at the convention, and some people were selling it for as high as $15, but I picked it up at a booth and they had the price marked at $4, and I thought that was reasonable. I didn't even haggle. I just forked $4 their way and they took it. I thought that was pretty good. I don't understand how some of these people think they can get away with charging like more than 300% the price when it's obviously not that expensive. Come on, man. Anyway, Marble Madness. Alright, let's take an adventure into accessory territory. I have the NES 4 score, which is an accessory slash peripheral, I guess you could say, for the Nintendo Entertainment System that allows you to plug in 4 controllers at once instead of just 2. Now, obviously most multiplayer games for the Nintendo Entertainment System only utilize 2 players, but there were a select few that let you play with 4. And, well, I own some of those games, and not to say that I have a lot of friends over all the time, but when I do, every now and then, it's something I could probably suggest. But I couldn't suggest it without an actual 4 score. So I picked this up. There was no price on it when I found it at this guy's booth at the convention. So he was just like, make me an offer. So I offered $8, and he said, how about 10? And I said, how about 9? And he said, how about okay then? NES 4 score. Pretty good accessory, to be honest, and it's one a lot of people don't know exists. So I'm really glad I picked it up. There you go. Alright, let's go into foreign territory, by which I mean not necessarily video games, but definitely video game related. I finally got Pat Contry's Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the NES Library, 1985 to 1995. Since he wrote this book, and for those of you who don't know who Pat Contry is, he's Pat the NES punk, YouTube celebrity, talks about video games, famous video game collector, owns both cartridges of Nintendo World Championships, probably my collecting idol for the NES, to be honest. But ever since he wrote this book, I have wanted it, and he's been at pretty much every convention, every retro world that I've been to, and he has been selling them. And I just, every time I'm like, I'm gonna get it. I'm totally gonna get it. I really want this book. But I end up spending the money on something to buff my collection up. But finally, this time I was determined because I really want this book. It's a staple for any NES collector. I really think that this is going to be a good investment. You know, thinking to myself as I'm walking up to the booth, finally shaking hands with Pat for the 3rd time, and I finally said, you know what? I want the book. I've been wanting to get it for years, and I just never have the money for it. I always end up spending it on something else. So he said, all right, you know what? I'll cut you a deal then. I usually charge $60 for it, but since you're really adamant about getting it, how about $55? And I said, absolutely. And I got it. So for those of you who don't know what this is, it's basically a guide that describes every single Nintendo Entertainment System game for both North America and Europe. Not Japan, because in Japan, the Nintendo Entertainment System is called something different, and the cartridges are different. So this is strictly Nintendo Entertainment System games for, again, North America and Europe. And it's full color, high detail. Every game has its own little blurb with a picture and information about the game. It is a fantastic book, and even if you don't collect for the NES, but you're just interested in the history and to see what some of the games were for it, maybe it'll give you a chance to start getting into NES. I don't know. I recommend picking it up for $60. It might seem a little bit steep, but this is something you'll own for the rest of your life. It's a great coffee table fodder, and it's really a great read. I've actually been reading through it as though it's a novel, and it's fantastic. I really enjoy it. Alright, let's head back to PlayStation, because I finally picked up something that needed to be in my collection, Final Fantasy VII, which is honestly not a Final Fantasy I'm a big fan of. But I didn't own it, and I recognize its validity, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, it is still a decent game. So I wanted to get it, and so I got it. For those of you who don't know about Final Fantasy VII, all two of you, Final Fantasy VII is the very first 3D Final Fantasy title, and it was the first Final Fantasy title on Sony PlayStation. I pretty much marked the departure of Final Fantasy from Nintendo consoles, well, at least the main series departed from Nintendo consoles, at the point that this game came out. It was also one of the first multi-disc games. I don't know if you can see here, but it has 3 discs. I won't open it because I don't want to fumble with it on camera. But yeah, 3 discs. This game is gigantic. It takes 1,000,000 hours to complete. I have never beaten this game, and hopefully I will someday, but I'll probably have to sit through it with somebody else because, again, I'm not the biggest fan. I prefer other Final Fantasies, especially the ones that came out before this. I like traditional role-playing games. This one's a little bit too futuristic for my liking. And also, I just don't like the fan base for Final Fantasy VII. I think they're a little bit caustic. But honestly, it's a good game. I'm just not into it. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII. So for those of you who wonder where Cloud came from in Smash, there he is. That's Cloud. For those of you who've ever heard the words Tifa Lockhart or wonder about Chocobo Racing, Final Fantasy VII. Now, I have the greatest hits version because I don't really care very much about label variants. I only collect label variants for, let's say, NES and Super Nintendo and other things of that nature. Because I didn't grow up with PlayStation, I'm not really the biggest collector of label variants. So I'm okay owning a greatest hits version. Some of you might laugh at me, and that's okay, because I'm laughing at myself. It's alright. I'll be fine. Alright, so here's a twofer since I got the same game on 2 different platforms, because I guess I'm weird like that. It's Tetris Attack for Game Boy and Super Nintendo. Tetris Attack is a game that I love. I used to play it all the time at my friend Chris's house. A couple of years back, we were just in really fierce competition with it, but I never actually owned it. So instead of picking it up for just Super Nintendo, which is what we used to play it on, I also got it for Game Boy, because why not? Tetris Attack on the go. For those of you who don't know, Tetris Attack is not a Tetris game. It's just called Tetris Attack. It's Nintendo's attempt at creating a versatile and challenging puzzle game. This is the game that made comboing famous in puzzle games. But yeah, Tetris Attack, it doesn't look like it from the cover art, but it's actually Yoshi themed. Like, Yoshi is the main character. It's basically a Yoshi puzzle game. You can't tell that looking at the cover art, and I never understood why they didn't do that on the cover art, put Yoshi on there. I think it would have sold more. Although Tetris Attack is pretty popular, although a lot of people that really don't play video games, they've heard of Tetris, but they've never heard of Tetris Attack. And I guess that's to be expected because Tetris Attack is a lot less popular than Tetris, but still popular. So I'm really glad I picked these up. They're fantastic. I'm sorry I dropped you, baby. Alright, you guys are going to crucify me when I tell you this next game that I picked up because I only really pick up games that I didn't own beforehand in their original formats. So, I love Zelda. I own every Zelda game ever. Sort of. I have the Zelda Collector's Edition for GameCube, and so that means I own all 4 of those games on GameCube, but I only owned 3 of them on their actual consoles. I never actually owned Ocarina of Time on N64, so I finally got it for its original platform. So now nobody can say that I don't own Ocarina of Time. I do. And look, I gave it the beautiful end label that I talked about in another video on my Facebook, for those of you who follow me there, because this goes up on YouTube. But yeah, I don't think I have to explain anything about Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It is widely considered to be a masterpiece among not only Zelda fans, but fans of video games in general, especially gaming from the early 90s, when 3D was first becoming a thing. I don't think it's the best Zelda in the world. In fact, I think it's very flawed. I do still love this game, though. I think it's a very great, fantastic game. But I like Majora's Mask better. In fact, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game. So unfortunately, Ocarina, you and I can be friends, but we can't be best friends. I'm so sorry. Alright, more Super Nintendo. I got Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. And you're screaming at yourself going, why would you do this to yourself? Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures is not a good game. It is really not. And you might be saying to yourself if you don't know video games, but Matt, it's Pac-Man. How could it be terrible? Well, imagine they took your favorite character of all time, from whatever video game he or she is from, and they plopped him or her into a video game that just didn't suit the type of gameplay that that person is used to, and then they just expected you to be okay with that. That's what this game is. This game took the maze game genre of Pac-Man, picked Pac-Man up, and plucked him into a point-and-click adventure game that is very unresponsive and very dumb and very weird, and I don't like this game, and nobody likes this game, but I got it because it's so infamous, and it's a very important staple of the SNES collection. It was also released for Sega Genesis, but because I was a SNES baby growing up, I opted to get this version first. I will get the Genesis version eventually. I played this game all the way through to completion, and I feel like that was a waste of my life. As much as I love video games, I hated playing this game. I don't like this game. I will say that right out the gate. But I'll probably play it again and again and again just because I love to hurt myself, I guess. Or maybe I'll show it off to a friend or something, or do a Let's Play of it on my channel. For those of you who want to see me suffer once I finally finish Super Mario 64, which, by the way, is happening. I just changed bedrooms in my house, and still getting the hang of setting everything up. Most of everything is pretty set up, but there are still a few things that have yet to be unpacked, just because I don't really have space for them. And one of those things is my recording setup, my microphone and stand and everything. Don't worry, it'll happen though, I promise. Anyway, Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. I'm so sorry to everybody. I now own this game. Okay, let's stay with Super Nintendo just because it was the first thing that I grabbed and I have no excuse. Disney's Aladdin. I love this game. Which is weird because I've never owned it and actually have never played it before. But, for those of you who know, I'm a huge fan of Game Grumps, and I have watched other people play this game before, up to and including Game Grumps. And I do own Aladdin for Sega Genesis, but they're actually two totally different games. That was made by Virgin, and this was made by Capcom. Now, I think Capcom is the superior game designer and developer. That's just my preference in general. It has nothing to do with the fact that this is on Super Nintendo. If Capcom made the version on Genesis, I probably would think that would be the better one. This one's on Super Nintendo. I love this game, and I can't wait to actually play it. Now, I haven't ever played this game before, which is weird because I did rent it from Blockbuster when I was a kid, but I remember like very vividly that weekend, even though I rented the game, just so much shit went down that weekend because like it was around the time my parents got divorced, so I couldn't play it and I couldn't enjoy it. There was too much going on, and I never got to play it. I lied to my mom and said that I played it so that she wouldn't be mad that I didn't, even though she spent the $5.41 after tax to get it for me from Blockbuster. But I never actually played it. I'm really sorry, Mom. But yeah, Disney's Aladdin. I am so excited to play this and finally live what I should have lived during my childhood, and finally experience one of the finest platformers the Super Nintendo has to offer. There you go. Alright, so I actually picked up a Dreamcast game, and this one has a little bit of a story. I got Resident Evil Code Veronica for Sega Dreamcast, which to my knowledge I believe is the only Resident Evil for Dreamcast, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's true. Now, I talked about Resident Evil a little bit in a previous pickup video because I never grew up playing Resident Evil and trying to get into it now as an adult, and it's extremely difficult because there's so much that goes into it, so I don't really know the lore behind it. I don't really know much of the history behind the games being made. So I don't know if this is actually the only one on Dreamcast. After doing my research, this seemed to be the only one, but again, correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, the story behind this. Now, as you can see, the case for the game looks like it's in pristine condition. There are no like scratches or anything on it, and that's great. That's what I love. But when I got the game and I saw it there sitting at the booth at the convention, there was this big ugly white sticker just plastered right over the front, and I knew what game it was because I'd seen the cover before and I could recognize the font. But oh god, that sticker was so ugly, and like I tried to peel it off a little bit, you know, clandestinely, so that I could see if I could maybe remove it with my hands after I bought the game, but it wasn't happening. But that's okay, I know some tricks. I have my trusty friend Gugon here, and some paper towels, and, you know, using a hairdryer to apply heat to soften the glue, so I knew I could get rid of this sticker point blank. But I wanted to pretend like I couldn't get rid of the sticker. Well, not really pretend that I couldn't, but I brought it up as a flaw, and I think that that's important, because if the game has a big sticker on it, well, that is technically cosmetic damage. So I brought it up to the vendor at the booth, and I said, would you mind doing insert amount that is $10 less for what the price is here, considering the big sticker on the front? And he just looked at it and just sighed and went, yeah, I guess that's acceptable, it was pretty big. So I got it for $10 cheaper, took it home, and that sticker came off really easily after some elbow grease, Goo Gone, and some heat with a hairdryer, and now it looks as though nothing bad has ever happened to it, ever. I can't speak very much about what the game is like because I've never played it. I have yet to play a single Resident Evil game ever. Again, I'm getting into them now as an adult, but I just thought that was an interesting story. And one of these days I should make a tips and tricks video for how to remove cosmetic damage from video games, because it's actually a lot easier than you might think. Even stuff that is really stuck on there, I can get it off. And I'll show you guys how eventually. But Resident Evil Code Veronica for $10 less, for basically no reason. Okay, let's enter strange territory again, because in addition to collecting video games, this is something I don't talk about a lot because it's not as important to me, I also collect board games. I'm looking up here because that's where all my board games are, in my closet. But one thing I love is when video games and board games collide. Now, many people know about the Zelda board game, or they know about the Super Mario Brothers board game, but there were actually a lot of video game board games. There were board games for Zaxxon, and Berserk, and Pac-Man, and that's the star of this video. Specifically, his better half, Ms. Pac-Man, the Milton Bradley game. I have never played this board game, but I'm really excited to. I bought it super cheaply because it was like right as all the vendors were closing up on the last day of the convention. I'm really excited to play this. Unfortunately, it's a board game, which means I can't play it alone. So if anybody out there wants to indulge me and play this with me, you will be my best friend for the rest of my life. You don't have to continue once I'm dead, I promise. That for sure is the end of the contract. Don't worry, you can get out of it. But yeah, Ms. Pac-Man, the board game! I'm not going to open it because I don't want everything to like fly all over the place, but oh goodness. It's so colorful, and it's so not Ms. Pac-Man. I assume that this board game pales in comparison to the actual arcade game, which happens to be one of my favorite arcade games of all time. But, yeah. At the very least, it's a really nice piece of history. Video games were so popular back then that people made board games out of video games. Whatever. Ms. Pac-Man board game. Alright, let's keep it fresh and funky, but not funky fresh, that's a little bit different. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for Sega Master System. This game was never released in North America, so it's a European copy. But between North America and Europe, Sega Master System games are region-free, so this will play on my North American Sega Master System. And no, it's not as good as the Genesis Sonic the Hedgehog 2, although it actually came out first. A lot of people don't know that. So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for Master System came out slightly before Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on Genesis, but they are two totally different games. and this one pales in comparison. It is the extremely inferior game, and even though it bears the title Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it ain't no Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Many video game collectors, and especially fans of Sonic the Hedgehog, think that this game is a spin-off. It's actually not. It's in the main series, but it's so not Sonic that it just doesn't feel right calling it a Sonic game. And I guess the same could be said of like Sonic 06 or something. But this game isn't that bad. It's still a good game. It's just not as good as Sonic 2 on Genesis. But yeah, I thought this was a really good pickup. I was looking specifically for Master System games a lot at the convention, and unfortunately this was the only one that I got, because not a lot of vendors were selling them, and if they were only selling the super expensive rare ones that I just didn't have the money for. I was trying to be on a budget, and I wanted to get more for less instead of less for more. So this was a good pickup. I'm really glad that I got it. Even though it's the only Master System game that I picked up, I'm very happy with it. And again, it is a good game. I recommend it, but not more than Sonic 2 on Genesis, which I know a lot of you have already played, but this is a good one to give a shot. It's pretty good. That's all I can say. Alright, so I grew up playing Pokemon Pinball, and when I say I grew up playing Pokemon Pinball, what I mean is a large portion of my childhood was me absorbed into Pokemon Pinball, because it was just encapsulating. When Ruby and Sapphire Pokemon Pinball came out, I didn't get it because I was still too busy with regular Pokemon Pinball. I just didn't care. I didn't give a shit. So as an adult, at the convention, I finally got Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire. I have never played this game. And to tell you the truth, I have never seen gameplay footage of this game, other than in the commercials for when it was advertised way back in the day when it first came out. I still haven't played it. I'm going to soon, but I mean, I've heard good things about this game from some people, so I know I'm in for a good time. Just like, you would think that I would have known more about this game, considering how much I love Pokemon, and especially how much I love pinball. Putting the two together, that was an obvious step forward for me to get Pokemon Pinball when it first came out for Game Boy Color. But I just never got Ruby and Sapphire. But here it is now. Happy. Alright, so actually this game I technically didn't get at the convention. The night before Joe, Dustin, Chris, and I went to the convention, Joe said that he had another double that he wanted to give to me, similar to My Sims Party from a couple of videos ago. Or was it last video? I don't remember. But it was Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the first one in the series. And I didn't have it, so I gave this fucker $1, and he gave me this fucking game. And what a game, jeez. So, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games is an Olympic sporting event game where you play as characters from either the Sonic universe or the Mario universe. And this marked the first time that Mario and Sonic were together in a video game that was not Smash Brothers. But yeah, check it out. It's pretty good, huh? Alright, so from here on out, it's all Nintendo stuff because that's what I collect for the most. So just bear with me. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan for Nintendo Game Boy, which I have never played, but I was watching a Game Chasers live stream a couple weeks ago, and Billy was playing this game on the stream, and I thought it looked really cool, so I figured I would pick it up. I do want complete collections for everything, so I was going to pick this up eventually anyway, and it's eventually with a big capital E, because God knows when I was actually going to, but because the game looked cool and I figured I wanted to play it, it started to get higher priority on my list. And when I saw it at the convention, I picked it up. I knew I had to have it, to quote Billy. And yeah, it's really fun. So I do recommend it. It is just a beat-em-up platformer, super awesome. I really enjoy it. Alright, N64 time. I got Pilot Wings 64, which is the only Pilot Wings game I own. I actually don't have Pilot Wings for SNES, and I don't think anybody has Pilot Wings Resort for Wii. But Pilot Wings 64. And Pilot Wings 64 has such like a groovy, like funky, like bassy soundtrack. And I know that just because like I've seen gameplay footage of Pilot Wings 64. But again, it's a game I've never played. I never owned it. So I picked it up. I'm very happy that I did. For those of you who may not know, Pilot Wings, the whole series, but I guess specifically 64 as well, is a flight simulation slash aerial acrobatics type game. It was the original Pilot Wings was a launch title for Super Nintendo, kind of as a tech demo to show what it could do. And I don't recall if this is a launch title for 64, but it's still a pretty impressive tech demo. I'll say that much. But yeah, Pilot Wings 64, pretty fun. All right, more on Game Boy. This one has a story. It's Kirby's Pinball Land. Now, I was combing the convention floor when we first got there for all the good deals. I don't just want to walk up somewhere and like, I want that, I want that, I want that. I like to look around and see what everyone has and make my decisions and keep like a note sheet, which this convention I didn't do. I didn't keep a note sheet this convention, just because I was too busy paying attention to other shit. But this one vendor had Kirby's Pinball Land in the box, complete, and I wanted it really badly, so I made a mental note of it, I walked away, and finally when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get it, I walked up and I looked for it, and it wasn't there, and I asked the vendor, and the vendor said, oh yeah, someone literally just bought it like 3 minutes ago. And I hated myself for the rest of the convention. But I did eventually find another vendor. Happened to be the only other vendor in the whole place that had a copy of Kirby's Pinball Land. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the box, but I only wanted it in the box because it happened to be there. I just really want to play this game. It's super fun. I played this as a kid because a friend of mine owned it, and I used to borrow it from time to time. But there it is, Kirby's Pinball Land. I don't think I have to explain much. It's pinball with Kirby, kind of like pinball with Pokemon. I don't really know which is more fun, to be honest. I haven't played this that much, and I don't remember too much of it from when I was a kid, but I'm really excited to play it now. Talk about games I should have owned already, but golf on Nintendo Entertainment System. Why didn't I have this already? I guess it's one of those like, oh, well, you know, it's not that expensive, and it's so, you know, commonplace and ubiquitous that I can get it any time. But because of that mentality, I haven't owned it even since I started collecting. In fact, I've been mad at myself for it. Now, when I first had an NES way back in the day, I did have golf, but long story short, something came up and I had to sell a bunch of games. This was before I became a collector, but I had to sell golf. But I finally got it back, and even though it's not the best golf game in the world, it's a pretty good attempt by Nintendo at making golf. Now, this guy is supposed to be Mario, at least that's what everyone thinks. I don't know if Nintendo has ever gone on record as stating that, but whatever, it's Mario. So maybe this is the first Mario Golf. Alright, let's go back to Game Boy, because I got so many Game Boy games, but it's Quirk. Quirk is a puzzle game where you're like basically Cool Spot here from 7-Up, and you have to walk around pushing boxes into holes so that you can walk over those holes to get to the exit. It's like 1 billion levels of awesome fun, and it's very tedious, but it's very challenging. It's very difficult. I recommend this to anybody who really likes brain teasers or puzzle games. This will keep you occupied for quite some time. I love this game. I used to emulate it, actually, back in the day when I used to emulate things. But now I'm glad I finally own it. It's really good. I mean, it's on Game Boy, so you can take it on the go. So similarly to Tetris, you have a nice little brain game to take with you wherever you are. And Quirk is a fantastic game. I don't know, there's like something about this guy that he reminds me of Cool Spot from 7-Up, even though he's totally not. But, whatever, you know? He's the uncool Spot, for those of you who get that stupid uncola joke. Super Nintendo, bring me a dream. Bring me the Page Master. I love this game. Fantastic platformer on Super Nintendo, and it's based on the movie of the same name, Page Master. This game I used to rent from Blockbuster constantly, and as a kid I really didn't understand it, but I knew it was fun. Like, I had a good time with it, getting as far as I could before I got stuck, because it does have slight puzzle elements to it. But as an adult, as I keep saying in this video, I am super happy to have this game. Oh goodness, I'm gonna play the shit out of you. Oh man. Alright, so one game genre that I'm kind of a fan of is the multi-user dungeon genre, or a dungeon crawler if you prefer. And I love Gauntlet. I own Gauntlet 2, but I never had Gauntlet 1. So I finally got it. Now this is the licensed version. When Gauntlet was first released for Nintendo Entertainment System, it was actually unlicensed by Tengen, and they got in a lot of trouble by Nintendo. So they had to file for the licensing, and they finally released it licensed. Otherwise, it would have been terrible for them. But because of that, 2 versions of this game exist. I don't have the unlicensed version, but I'm glad I at least have one version of the game. They're the same game, they're just in different cartridges. One of them is black, and it's like weird and upside down and shit like that. Google it, you can see what I mean. But I'm just glad that I own the game. It's the same game, no matter what, and it's a fantastic game. You play as one of like 4 different classes, like Valkyrie, Wizard, Warrior, and Elf, and you. This is actually like one of the best dungeon crawling games, period, in my opinion, and I really love it. It's heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons and games of that type, and it's very fast-paced and action-oriented, and you need to work together similarly to games of that genre. So, for those of you who are interested in something like that, I really recommend Gauntlet, and I especially recommend its successor, Gauntlet 2, which I think is the better game. Yeah. Alright, second to last thing on our list today, Technofear, which just the other day I finally played for the first time with my friend Kayla, and we were super confused, and even having played video games for a billion years, maybe more, I was super confused. Now, this is a game that was on my list, and I really wanted to pick it up because I like interesting takes on old mechanics. So I figured, well, it's Tetris, but with a twist. What is that twist, though? It's this weird, like, spherical thing where, like, blocks fall from, like, the foreground, and you have to, like, put them into a sphere, and it's really strange, and I don't understand it. Not necessarily that I don't like it, but I don't get it. I need to play it more. But it definitely confused the crap out of the 2 of us when I played it with Kayla. There's not really much else I can say about it. It's pretty cheap. If that's your type of thing, you can pick it up, and it's not expensive at all. And yeah, with all of these N64 games, I showed on Ocarina of Time, but I did put the end label on it because, well, I needed to sit in that shelf, and I don't want to have to take them out and go, oh, is this it? Is this it? Even though they're alphabetized. It just makes it easier. So I recommend these end labels highly. Maybe I'll put that video on YouTube. It's on my Facebook. But, yeah. Technofear, the confusing, weird mix-up that probably shouldn't have ever happened. And finally, we've reached the end of the video where I talk about the final game I picked up at the convention, and it's a game that, again, I should have had. It's A Boy and His Blob, Trouble on Blobolonia. That's the full title, not to be confused with A Boy and His Blob for Wii. This is the first game, and it's actually made by, if you can see it here, David Crane, the man who programmed Pitfall for the Atari 2600. So you can tell it's going to be good. This is a staple for the NES library, and again, it's not a very expensive title, so I'm glad I finally got it. A Boy and His Blob, Trouble on Blobolonia, is a puzzle platformer where you play the role of a boy who owns this really strange white blob creature, but if you feed him certain flavors of jelly beans, he turns into different objects and assets that you can use to overcome obstacles and solve puzzles. It's very fun, and it's not actually a very long game. You can beat it in just a few hours. I used to emulate this game when I emulated, but now that I own it, I'm going to have a grand old time playing this thing on my TV. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. And because the game is so ubiquitous and inexpensive, you can actually get it really cheaply complete in the box, and you can even get it really cheaply factory sealed. So if that's your type of thing, go for it. A fantastic game. I super recommend it. And that's it for my October 2017 pickups. I'm sorry this video came out a couple days later than usual. I've just been really busy. Since I'm back in school and everything, stuff's going all over the place and I just can't deal. But now that it's November, I am ready to pick up some new great games for this month and buff up my collection even more. I'm starting to run out of space. I might have to start building shelves on the walls and get rid of these big bookcases. But we'll see. I don't know. Until then, Thank you so much for tuning into another pickup video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't ramble too much about every single game, but thank you so much. I always appreciate it. Have yourself a fantastic day.